Good morning, everybody, and happy Thursday. Once again, TikTok Live is being TikTok Live. Give me just a second. Why is this? I can't win with TikTok Live. I really can't. So give me just a second, folks. It is being extremely difficult once again for absolutely no reason other than the fact that it is TikTok Live. So give me just a second. Every time I go live, TikTok is just like, gonna make it a little more difficult for you. There we go. There we go. Second time in a row. So, good morning, everybody, and happy Thursday. For those of you that are new, welcome. And for those of you that are returning, welcome back to the Torque and Thrust Talk Show, episode number 15, Flat Earth. My name is Bill, and on today's show, we're going to be talking about Boeing quality assurance stand-downs, GTA 6 development updates, and a showdown between the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6. Then we're going to learn some industry terms with jargon in a jiffy, help you build a pathway to success with Career Corner, live listener Q&A, and our discussion this week, the long-awaited and I think appropriately timed flat Earth. That's, as many of you know, this is a topic that has plagued me since I've been able to go live on TikTok Live. So we're going to talk about it today on the podcast. My co-host is fellow co-founder of the Three Green Simulations Group and retired NYC EMT. It's Tommy D of Level Flight Simulations. Good morning, Tommy.
Morning, Bill. How's it going?
Yeah, it is going well. The weather has been brutal this past couple of weeks, or actually past 2 weeks, like negative degrees, snow, rain, but finally it's about 40 to 50 degrees now, and it's warming up, which is great for me. But unfortunately, once it moves on from me, that means it's headed to you. Isn't that right, Tony?
Right.
Tommy.
Yeah, about 24 to 36 hours later. I get it.
Yeah. So my weather's improving, but unfortunately, Tommy's is not. That's just how it goes. So unfortunately, but good weather. That means good weather is on the way, though, Tommy. It is coming. And as you could tell behind me, a couple episodes ago, we talked about the update where I'm moving houses. You can see the boxes and stuff, the poor lighting behind me. That's just because everything's getting packed up. As Tom and I were talking about earlier, this is the last live episode of the podcast until April, because once I am done with this whole setup, Hangar 26, my computer rig, everything's getting torn down and boxed up and ready to go. The reason I'm doing it so early on is I want to make sure that I pack it properly so nothing gets broken in the move, and that's going to take time. So I want to make sure I'm not trying to rush that. So the way it's going to work over the next couple weeks is we're still going to be releasing episodes. We're targeting every Saturday, but rather than a live talk show like this, Tommy and I are going to be taking turns doing the talk show solo. So it'll be called Bill's Corner and Tommy's Corner. It'll be the same format with minor changes such as no jargon in the jiffy, and no live listener Q&A, but back and forth to keep the podcast going until we're up and running again in my new house, in my new studio. In April of 2024 is when we plan on going back live. So just if it's a little weird like that, you're not seeing lives, that's why. So but up first, I will take over some aviation news today. Once again, talking about Boeing. Boeing has been the big talk of news. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but they're all over the news because of the MAX 9 incident that happened with Alaska. I believe it was 1282. I don't have the number right in front of me. But what we learned and what has happened, if you guys missed it, the plug door, which is supposed to be a pressure door on the MAX 9 after the wing on both sides, on Alaska 1282, the 12 bolts that were holding it in place failed, and the door came off, caused a depressurization event, emergency, and subsequent emergency landing back at Portland, which then resulted in the FAA grounding all MAX 9s to inspect this door. And unfortunately, during these inspections, the airlines found that more airplanes that had these issues with the door. So since then, the MAX 9s have been grounded, mainly with United Airlines and Alaska Airlines. And because of that, there's been some cancellations associated with it. I know United's been doing a little bit with equipment substitution, so using another type of 737 because we have tons of 737s. But I remember, because I was in Austin last week, seeing a United Airlines and an Alaska MAX 9 grounded in Austin, Texas, right next to each other. Now, most recently, United Airlines in Alaska, the FAA has approved a process in which to inspect and repair the doors and return them to service. But it is going to be a lengthy process because it involves removing seats, that panels, doing inspections, etc., etc. But the news this week, like I said, is going to be that the Boeing quality assurance stand down. So a stand down, if you never experienced, means all work stops and you guys focus on one thing. Flight schools, I've had it at my college. We used to have safety stand downs once a year where nobody was flying. It was just a symposium basically on safety. And we had NTSB investigators, people in the industry, like aviation, different facets of the aviation industry talking to us about safety. So it's good. But Boeing is doing this. So the Boeing assembly facilities in Renton, Washington, they're going to pause for 24 hours today. It's as of today. So this is the most recent news we've ever presented. 24 hours today on January 25th for a quality stand down session focused on improving quality processes. Employees who work on the assembly of the Boeing 737 aircraft will evaluate their work and make recommendations for improvement during the session. These sessions are part of Boeing's efforts to address manufacturing lapses following the grounding of the 737 MAX 9 and to strengthen its quality management system. Not mentioned in here also is the same type of plug door is used on the next generation Boeing 737-900 ERs. And Boeing has recommended, it's not an airworthiness directive, but Boeing has recommended that airlines also visually inspect those plug doors as well. So quite a big process. So what they're doing today is they're completely standing down. They're stopping all production of 737s, and everybody's just focusing on evaluating the work that they've done and trying to find discrepancies to try to better the quality or the quality of the build. Now, I kind of skipped over this because I was interested in this, but let's bring in Tommy on this. Let's talk about this for a second. So, Tommy, w- the way I see this is Boeing's been caught with their pants down, right? They,
Yeah,
and now I feel like this quality assurance stand down should be had already been part of their culture. What do you
yeah,
think?
it should be, and I think it should be a little bit longer than a day, especially with the current events. We should probably have a quality stand down week,
Yeah,
and
well,
bring in the contractors.
or maybe doing it like once a month, I would say, because a week offline for a manufacturing company, especially an aircraft manufacturing company, that's going to decimate money wise, right? That's like financially, that's not a good idea. But I would say like once a month having a quality assurance stand down
Yeah,
because
and
these
the
airplanes aren't being turned out every week. You know what I mean?
yep, and my strong opinion is also they need to have representatives of their contractors there. People who they get the nuts and
Yep.
bolts from. Where do they get their Loctite from for all the nuts and bolts and things
Tight.
like it doesn't matter to me how little of a part they have in the production, it's still a part of the production.
That's 100% correct. And I want to do some more research, and I'll continue to do this because obviously continuing a developing story because Boeing has not had a good time with the Max. There's our history with the Max has been riddled with bad things. Um, I want to dig in and see when they switch from in-house because at some point Boeing was like, all right, we're going to start using third-party installers for certain things. For example, Boeing installed the door as if I remember correctly, the plug door on the Max 9. Um, or actually, it was a third party, I think, that installed it. And then they bring it back to um, if the airlines don't want it configured that way, that's when they bring it back to Boeing and they pull out the door and reinstall it themselves, a plug door. So there's a third party component in there. It's just not all of it's in house. But what I believe is that Boeing should have already had quality assurance. It shouldn't have gotten this far where people's lives are at risk. You know what I mean? Because we have the two Max crashes at the very early onset, pre 2020, that grounded the Maxes initially. We've had multiple airworthiness directives and pilot bulletins associated with things that could be potentially dangerous. And we were lucky on Alaska 1282 that someone wasn't sitting there next to that plug door with either their seatbelt off or someone smaller like a child where the seatbelt may not have necessarily secured them in place and they would have gone flying out the window
Yeah.
or out that thing. It was a blessing in disguise that nobody was seated there. But also, folks, to remind you, that's why you keep your seatbelts on even when you're seated. Just saying. A lot of people argue that, but there's a good reason to do that, just in case. But it could have been a fatal accident if someone got sucked out and was sitting at that. So I don't know why Boeing hasn't had more quality assurance, especially such a big name manufacturer should have this built in. We shouldn't see a safety or assurance stand down as a result of an almost fatal incident.
I agree.
So,
And everyone should be there from the quality assurance side. Double checking the nuts, the bolts, the rivets, everything.
yeah.
And I'm sure you can't tell me that somewhere in that factory there aren't metallurgists. You know, even though it's a brand new production aircraft, it's still being bent and
Yeah, well,
deformed and stuff like that.
yeah, well, and also the thing is too, you got to think about it too. And I just noticed this. It might be a mistype in from the Simple Flying article, but it sounds like the people that are doing the installing are also the ones inspecting their work.
Yeah, there's something
That
about
sounds a
that.
little. That sounds a little. Now, granted, I could be the top welder or riveter or whatever your position is at Renington, or in Washington State, but I would still want somebody else who's also qualified in what I do to check my work. I feel like I would be biased to be like, well, that looks good, but someone else can come in and be like, well, that's actually not done correctly. Same thing like in the flight deck. I mean, that's why there's two of us. We're constantly checking one another. You know what I mean? Making sure we're doing things the way we're supposed to. Or if I miss something, the captain will say something. Or if the captain misses something, I will say something. You know?
Yeah, you definitely
Um,
need that checks and balance, especially when it comes to an aircraft, because you know what? I don't know if any of the aircraft you personally fly have it. I have never ever seen an aircraft with a brake pedal.
I mean,
Just
we
to
have them. They're on the
yeah,
top
but
of the rudder pedals.
right, your toe brakes, but they don't work very well midair.
Oh,
It's
I
not
see
like
what you
driving
mean.
a car. When the car starts, when your car is breaking down, you could get over to the side of the road, get yourself to some safety point, or if you're lucky, a gas station. You're not going to do that at 33,000 feet.
Okay, I see what you mean. I was like, we have brakes, Tommy, and we have a parking brake too. We do have an emergency brake. I see what you mean. You mean airborne? We can't pull off to the side of the road, turn on the hazards, and call AAA. Is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
it's
Yeah.
just at best, what are you going to get? An engineer and another pilot on the company radio frequency to try help you troubleshoot the problem if it's that serious of a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. So it's also public perception too, because remember when the Max got grounded, the news media was out there saying, "Hey, this is what a Max looks like." Even United on their app said, "Hey, you are flying a Max aircraft." So it's one of those things like it's perception, right? Now you're going to
Hmm.
see because a lot of our new orders are or United's new orders, I should say, are with Max aircraft. And even Scott Kirby, the CEO, is now talking about possibly looking for a future without Max 10s or 9s or Max aircraft, which is huge because Boeing and United, since the beginning in 1926, have been partners through all this. In fact, United was the launch customer for the 777 back in 1997. The
Right.
everything was developed was because United helped them research and help develop the 777 with them. So for them to say that's serious, that is very serious. And actually, I was just watching this morning the Alaska Airline CEO as well is extremely publicly upset with Boeing for their lack of quality assurance. So I think it's a step in the right direction what they're doing now. But Boeing, please, for the love of God, this shouldn't be a PR stunt. This should be part of your regular culture. Don't let your your reputation for building safe, good aircraft, obviously because the 737s lasted since 1965. Don't let that end because of cost-cutting measures. Like pay the extra penny, do the quality assurance, so that way, because I guarantee you, a lawsuit due to a crash, multiple crashes, and then subsequently airlines retracting orders for the Max aircraft if they're not safe, that's going to cost you a lot more money than just doing the right things to make sure quality assurance or is in place. So
Right. And then also, at what point too do you look at the project and be like, you know, just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean you should. When
yeah,
do you look
well
at
we
the
can.
Max program as a whole and be like, you know what? We had a really, really good idea, but we got to eat a little bit of crow here. We're going to discontinue the Max,
Well,
and
the
we're
problem is,
redeveloping the NGs.
well, the thing is, they're not going to redevelop the NGs because it's always the thing is the 737 by design was meant to be obsolete like 20 years ago.
Yep.
There's one major one of the big four airlines that solely flies 737s that has kept this in service. Southwest. Max was the answer to try to battle Airbus's new fleet, the technology. Heck, the Embraer 175 is more technically advanced than the Boeing 737, even the Max. So that was Boeing trying to keep up with the um, with the technology and basically the future of aviation when they were getting left behind, but as well as maintain one of their primary customers, which is Southwest. And Southwest, being a low cost airline, wants to minimize training and maintenance costs. So they're telling Boeing, hey, we don't want to pay for everyone in our fleet to have a brand new type rating. So we need you to keep this within the same type rating parameters. That's why when you look at the overhead of a 737, it is literally almost exactly the same to the overhead in 1967. So that's where that comes from too. Is Southwest is the primary reason why the airplane is so antiquated in a sense. So I agree with you. I think anything beyond the Max 10 needs to. That's it. They need to move on to something else.
Yeah, it's
I
time.
think. I mean the 737s like 800, 900 ERs, Max 8s, and Max 9s. They're gonna still be flying when I retire. I'm gonna still see those around, and all the young kids that I'll be flying with are gonna be like, "You flew the 737 700?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." Like the same way I'm with the guys that have flown the 3 and 5s. I think it's so cool that they flew that variant of the 737. Those are the classics. So yeah, I don't want Boeing. I'm a fan of Boeing, but I'm not a huge fan right now. I don't want them to lose their reputation because of cost saving measures. Like we talked about last week, cost saving measures and aviation shouldn't really go, or I should say, aircraft manufacturing should not go hand in hand. That's not a thing, Boeing. Your job is to create a safe airplane, not necessarily to save money. That's my 2 cents. Obviously, I don't own the business, but that's my 2 cents.
And you also inject in that little bit of corporate America mentality. Because
Yep,
I work for corporate America the same as you do, just a completely different industry. But um, you know, you look at it, and I actually sit there with disbelief, going, "Really? Like, dude,
well,
the
I mean,
47
yeah,
thread screw, the 50 thread screw, with the amount of screws that you buy, and you have corporate purchasing power, it's less than a penny. Like,
yeah. Well, but the thing is, the pennies, and they also have to forecast loss and anticipate. I understand the business aspect behind it, but manufacturing should be the last place where cost cutting comes in my opinion. But anyways, that is my the update on the Boeing debacle with the 9 Max. Is they're doing today. They're doing a 24-hour quality assurance stand down. What also makes me extremely nervous is what they're going to find, and if they're going to report it, because it is an internal stand down. So I don't know if they're going to report the findings. If I was the FAA or Boeing customers, I'd be like, I want to report on everything you found so we can start looking forward to, because it's a liability on us. Um, and I actually want to keep you in on this one, Tommy, because I think you'd appreciate this week in aviation history. I kind of skipped over it because I want to talk about Boeing first, but I wanted you in on this because I think you'd appreciate this too. So this week in aviation history, January 21st, 1976. This was in England, France, and Bahrain and Brazil. The first passenger service by a supersonic airliner begun, as British Airways and Air France Concorde supersonic transports take off simultaneously from Bahrain and Rio de Janeiro. So this week in 1976 is when, and the golden age of one of the golden age of passenger travel, if you ask me, started with the Concorde.
mm-hmm.
And we haven't seen it since. It ceased operations in 2000, 2001.
Okay.
And the main thing is it was super inefficient to operate. It was so costly because it didn't carry a whole lot of people. It was expensive to fly. It wasn't really publicly accessible, right? Because it was doing basically London JFK runs. You couldn't really fly it supersonic over land because you'd be blowing up everybody's windows, right? And then it burned a lot of fuel. That thing burned so much fuel.
Oh my
Because
God.
yeah, so
Oof.
it was one of those things. It wasn't really sustainable. So there is the Boom Overture, which is in its starting to gain traction. It was dead in the water for a little bit when they lost Rolls-Royce as the engine manufacturer, but they found somebody else, and they seem to be progressively going along. United has and American has orders, I think, in 2029 for the Boom Overture. I honestly, I hope it comes to fruition. but I am not entirely sure it will. It's just like the ES-19 electric regional aircraft that's supposed to come, the hybrid turbofan engines that are hydrogen-powered turbofan engines that are supposed to be retrofitted to the CRJ aircraft. We'll see. It's cool to talk about, but we'll see. I would love to see supersonic aviation back, because it's just like the Apollo missions, right? With the less computing power that we have now, we were able to send people to the moon, and we stopped doing that in the late 70s, because that's when the shuttle mission started. And then we stopped the shuttle mission. And then in 2027, we're going to let the ISS burn up in the atmosphere. All
Yep.
that hard work gone. Just
Hundreds of
over the
millions
Indian
of
Ocean.
dollars.
It makes me sad, because that's like, I grew up in the space shuttle era and the ISS, and that was inspiring. And like now we're trying to go back to the moon, but it's like, isn't that a step? We already did that. So, you know what I mean? Like, why are we going? I don't know. Anyways, it also might have been cost too, because it is expensive to launch people out and risky to launch people out. But we've done it before, so hopefully we can do it again. But anyways, I digress. So that was This Week in Aviation History and my aviation news. Up next will be Tommy talking about his gaming news for the week, which is starting off with a GTA 6, which we both are so excited for, a GTA 6 update. Take it away, Tommy.
Thanks, Bill. And just as a side note, I do miss watching the Concorde because it would come right over my house. I was in the final approach vector for it every Wednesday and Sunday. But how you doing, everybody? Happy Thursday. Happy Friday to me. Yay. Just a couple of quick updates going on here. GTA 6, which everybody knows, Bill and I are very, very excited to get to. Rockstar didn't really release a whole lot. They just kind of gave a couple sentences here and there that they are progressing. Fiscal year 2025 is going to be the release. That is their absolute target. And this is the part that's going to really bother me. As everyone knows, I'm a PC gamer. I'm not a console gamer. As you know, look at my background here. We got Bessie and all. I don't have room to put another TV in the house and a console and all that. So Rockstar is literally just targeting the PlayStation and Xbox platforms for release of this game because they want to go with what sells. GTA 6 for PC probably won't launch, and I quote, for a long time to come. So, Rockstar, as an avid PC gamer, get the let out. The programming isn't that different. I've spoken to 2 computer scientists. I know it's involved in it. So, stop with this what sells. You're releasing GTA 6. You're going to make money hand over fist. Release it for the PC. Like, smarten up. There's going to be another trailer coming out. They're going to have the protagonists and a little bit more of the players coming out in there next, but they're still being pretty tight-lipped. It's given a glimpse of the Vice City, but it's going to be looking a lot better. And I don't remember the name of it, but they weren't calling it Vice City. It was something else when Bill and I aired the trailer, the premiere trailer to announce the coming of it. But
It's called the
Rockstar,
Oneida.
thank you. Rockstar is definitely, you know, yeah, they're on my radar, and not necessarily in a good way as a PC gamer. As a gamer in general, I can't wait to see this. I might actually have to fly out to where Bill lives and just look over his shoulder while he plays if I got to wait another year for the game to come out. But with that being said, that's enough on the Rockstar. The next bit of news that I was bringing up last week, I brought up Twitch and how they're laying off some of their people. And interestingly enough, I did a little bit more digging. So one of the reasons Twitch is laying people off is the way they pay their affiliates and their streamers. They were actually the affiliate program was actually paying on a 70-30 basis. So if we think of it in terms of $1, you were making 30 cents on the dollar per stream. So now if you streamed for 2 hours and you made $50, I mean, that's pretty substantial, and they're paying that out to you. Now, whether the accounting department didn't exactly work it out right, that maybe it should have been an 80-20 split, 90-10, you're not going to get anyone to stream on your channel exclusively, or what the difference of the uh, separate contracts with different streamers are, because they are under contract to use it exclusively, which means if you go on contract to Twitch, you can't stream YouTube, you can't stream TikTok in the genre that you're doing, that you agree to do with Twitch. The Affiliate Partner Plus program is being released now, and they put $100,000 cap on it with the 70-30 split with Twitch. And the second they put that up, they also resulted with that $100,000 cap that a lot of streamers didn't want to do it because, let's face it, capitalism at its finest. If you're sitting at home and you're a streamer, this is your livelihood. Yes, it's great to make six figures, but why make 100,000 when I can make 400,000 someplace else? That would be me included. You don't stay stagnant. You always look to push, push, and push. So, Bill, if you would mind coming back into the conversation as I'm winding down with this Twitch thing, I would like to get your opinion on that. Since we both
What
have
that
Twitch accounts, we're live on Twitch now.
we are live on Twitch, but we don't get paid. We
No,
volunteer to
not
do
even close.
No, we do. Tommy and I largely do this podcast because we enjoy doing it, and we know that even though it's a small group of people that watch the podcast, they enjoy it as well. So, that's our primary thing, because Tommy and I have like regular jobs, so our sole income is not Twitch. So, let me understand this straight, because I was looking at the article that you posted in the document while I was looking at it. So part of the reason why Twitch is doing the layoffs is because the way they play the way they pay their streamers. Is that what you're saying? Is the
Yeah.
agreement?
Yeah. The way I read into that article was that their top streamers, the ones that I was talking about making over $1 million with them fiscal
Hmm.
2023.
Yeah.
All right. They made their money. Good for you guys. And believe me, I'm not bashing anyone. But from the business sense, and for those of you who don't know, I am in college taking business classes right now. And things like this actually came up. I'm in the process of a project where I'm using this as an approved research article for my business class. That where did they fully um, do their homework on their cost effectiveness when it came to the split? I'm sure
Yeah.
they did on their side, but I mean 70-30, that's a pretty big split.
It is, and what I'm curious about, and me personally, because we don't know the titles or the roles of the people that got laid off, right? We don't know if they were like
No, they did
I
not release it.
we don't know if they were like janitorial staff. We don't know if they were developers, software developers. What surprises me is if they went into that like 70-30 split knowing that they wouldn't be able to sustain their headquarter staff during an economic downturn that we're seeing right now for whatever reason with Twitch. And really with Twitch, it's because one, it is extremely hard to become an affiliate. I've been
Yes,
trying
it
for
is.
probably 8 months, probably going on 9 months now.
I'm
Um,
over a year trying to become an affiliate on Twitch. It's to the
it,
point now where I just might leave Twitch and go to a different platform.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, we started streaming. We're on Kick live right now too. So Kick is something that the talk show is exploring, and that Tom and I have talked about as well. Something that's not as heavily saturated. We think that the podcast has a good niche and a good format. It's just we're especially on Twitch and even on TikTok. It's just an oversaturated market. So it. Yeah, so but I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but it just surprised me that Twitch would lay off, because the core, right? You have the core group at the HQ that keeps things running, and the streamers are like additional income, right? They're kind of like the face, the marketing side of Twitch. I am super surprised that maybe it's because it's contracts with the big affiliates that they can't back out of it. But I am really surprised that they're laying off their own versus people who are only affiliated with Twitch.
And
You
I
know,
was very surprised at that also, because one of the things you are currently in a union. I have been in unions. We've dealt with contracts a little bit different than this. This is more of like a contractor type contract. You know what I'm saying?
well,
Like a
they're yeah,
1099 type deal.
they're an individual contractor, sub
You mean
or
to tell me there's no escape clause for Twitch
independent
in there?
contractor.
They
Well, the
must
thing
have
is,
it. an entire legal department. I'm sure there's some sort of an escape clause.
But here's the thing, let's say you're dealing with a $1 million streamer, right? I bet you they have one too. I don't think the
Hmm.
contract that you and I would enter in as a base affiliate would be the same as the one that a big name streamer would be entering. They probably have their own contract where there's either a buyout. I'm a guarantee there's no escape for either. There's going to be like a buyout clause or something that has to do with termination of the contract. So,
Right.
but
And
here's the thing. At the end of the day, any streamer can either breach the contract or do the buyout and go to another, like say Kick, right, or go to another streaming platform. Whereas Twitch, you're laying off the foundation of your headquarters. So I don't know. I don't like that. Doesn't sit well with me, rather than saying, "Hey guys, we need to renegotiate with you guys with the contract or stop the affiliate program for a little while we're trying to recuperate finances." I think there's better ways going around it, but laying off the core of your company, I don't think is help, especially with streamers maybe being a source of income for the company. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe the streamers bring in more income and they would be more of a loss with the streamers
right. And
being removed. So,
hypothetically, let's say you and I, like, let's say the talk show is offering an affiliacy with Twitch. Okay.
mhm,
We're actually a two-tier income source for them. There's the income from the stream itself, and then there's the income from the ads that they're going to inject after when we're in post production. And I could speak on this in a YouTube fashion. I have a couple videos on there. The my fly by wire Airbus and
mhm.
one of my lives. Once I hit 400 views, now I'm not monetized yet on YouTube.
YouTube.
You need 500 viewers for that. I think I'm sitting around 190. But once I hit 400 views on my A320 video from cold and dark to pushback, automatically started injecting the ads. And that's another
Huh.
source of income.
So it's obviously, I don't know. I just don't necessarily agree with Twitch laying off their primary core people that where
No,
the
neither
I
do
feel
I.
like
They're the ones keeping the
yeah,
company going.
yeah. So we'll see how that continues. I'm just not sure what Twitch is doing right now. So
Oh, I have bookmarks for this because I have my personal opinion, which I'm not going to share yet because it would start speculation, and Bill and I just don't do that. We don't do speculation. We don't do politics. We don't do drama. And
well, we are doing flat Earth as a discussion topic later.
yeah, but they see for me that's just like pure entertainment.
but
But
but I mean it's still opinion. But anyways, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
but
actually,
Bill
it's
will
not
know
even
my
opinion,
opinion
but
offline. But I the writing is on the wall for a next step. So I'm going to be watching this relatively close, ladies and gentlemen. We will be talking about Twitch again um, periodically over the next,
yep, it'll continue to
conservatively, I'm going to say fiscal quarter.
yeah, it'll continue kind of like the development with Boeing in the
Yes.
aviation industry, which is something we'll keep mark on. Well, thanks, Tommy, for gaming news. It is my turn this week to talk a little bit about some automotive news. This week, once again, coming from Motor Trend, I was looking at car reviews because in a couple months, I'll probably be looking at getting a new car. I am kind of an EV nerd. I'd like an EV, but right now they're, like I've talked about last episode, they're a little more expensive than I'd like them to be. But I found this really cool article where the writer, and I believe a friend of theirs, maybe a fellow writer from Motor Trend, took out two different vehicles. These vehicles are the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6, both EV vehicles around the same size, weight, etc. However, off the car sticker, the Kia EV6 claims to be a little more efficient. So these two riders from Motor Trend took out these two cars in Santa Monica, California, and their goal was to start off on the Pacific Coast Highway with only a 20% charge on their vehicles. Then they were going to drive until the 20% drained, and then they were going to get towed to a charger of their choice, uh, charge as quickly as they could to 80%, and then continue to the well, actually, at the 80% mark, they were done. So the idea was to drain that, see how quickly or how efficient the battery drained, and then how quickly they could recharge. So they started off pretty good. The Hyundai, I think the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 were pretty even, although the EV6 was showing a little more efficiency right off the bat. But once they got down to the less than 10% charge warning, they both basically drained the same. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 hit empty, if you would, on a EV fuel gauge, if you will, and then proceeded to continue for 8 miles. And then the Kia EV6, when it hit zero, continued for another 10. So there is a little bit of buffer in that. But it was real funny because they didn't want to get stuck in traffic, so they pulled off into kind of like an area that had like a little racetrack, and they were just doing race patterns until the car died. So then the driver who was driving the Hyundai Ioniq 5 used the Hyundai app to send out an SOS for a tow truck, and then the driver of the Kia EV6 was trying to call Kia. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 got picked up first, got taken to a quick charger that was available, and then the Kia EV6 was there shortly after, but ultimately the Hyundai Ioniq 5 won the race to deplete their battery and to recharge it back to 80%. Overall, though, looking at the article, one, it was fun. It was an interesting way to test the longevity of the battery and the charging capability and the range. But basically what it came down to is Hyundai had a better car recovery service or app, basically, where Kia, you had to call and wait on an operator and try to figure out where you were, not to mention the availability of the chargers as well, because you got to remember, this is in California, so EVs are a little more commonplace, so there's a lot more charging stations out there versus, let's say, in the Midwest or places where EVs haven't really caught on yet. So that kind of pointed out to those two things. Is one, Hyundai Ioniq 5 had a better recovery service when they did run out of charge, but also in California they have better charging services, and they both charged up from 0 to 80% in about 25 minutes. So it was the same across the board there. But overall, the Kia EV6 lasted a little bit longer in terms of battery life from that 20%. And if it wasn't for the Kia EV6's recovery service for taking so long to come get the tow truck to pick them up and take them to the exact same charger that the Hyundai went to, the Ioniq 5, it would have probably been the Kia EV6 that won the race per se. So I'll bring Tommy in on that because I know we talk a lot about EVs. But so basically what it comes down to is the Kia EV6 is a better EV in terms of efficiency, but it looks like Hyundai has a better towing service, if you will, or recovery service. So, in your opinion, Tommy, yeah. So, if you had to choose, the only two cars you could get was the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Kia EV6 based off this race. Which one would you choose?
I'd be going Hyundai.
Yeah,
I'd be going Hyundai for that support system.
I was gonna say, because I know where I live, the EV infrastructure isn't as robust as it is in California. Because when I was San Francisco based, I would walk through a mall to get to the train to get to the airport, and they had like 30 Tesla chargers out there, and people were always out there eating their lunch, charging their Teslas, right? You don't see that here. There are some here, but like the nearest like super center for Tesla or whatever for the charging is 45 minutes away. So I would go with a car that has similar efficiency, but has a better recovery service. So, and I don't know if that was a driver's choice. I can't remember in the article exactly if the driver of the Kia was like, I'm going to call versus use the app. But it sounded like you had to call Kia versus Hyundai had an app that had like an SOS function on it. And in that SOS function, it sent the car information, the location information, and the nearest charger information to the tow truck driver.
Yeah, and funny, you're familiar with where I live. You've actually been here. So... Yep. In downtown, their Sheetz has, and we've spoken about Sheetz before on the show. Sheetz has a huge thing. All of the Sheetz in the area now all have 10 Tesla charging stations.
There you go. So, I mean, it is growing. That's the thing. It is growing. It's huge. I think it's West Coast to East Coast. And honestly, I think East and West Coast, because of population and popularity of EVs, are going to be first, and then I think the central part of the United States will eventually catch up. But like, I personally would want to go with the car that has a quicker recall or recovery service than a one that I have to call and maybe find somebody, you know. And plus, honestly, EV where I am now would be my day-to-day car. I'd be charging at my house most of the time. I would not be driving it long range. That's what my other car is for. Right. Just because of the lack of infrastructure. Because the last thing I want to do is get caught out in the middle of nowhere with zero charge and have to use a gas generator to charge my electric car. They do sell those. That is a thing.
That's hysterical.
That's the Tesla comes with one. I think all of them do. Like you can buy backup, like a little generator. You put like a gallon or two of gas in it, and you can get an emergency charge, which kind of defeats the purpose of an EV.
Of an EV.
If you ask me, it kind of completely opposite of what that's all about. But yeah, so that was that article, the Hyundai Iconic 5. The actual article name was called "The Stupidest Race Ever," or like the dumbest race ever, or something like that. The race to try to drain your battery is what it was about. So I thought it was an interesting read, while highlighting some interesting things that most EV6, because the technology is so new and everybody has access to the same technology, most of the stuff is going to be the same in terms of like range and efficiency. But what's going to vary is going to be stuff like recovery services that come with the car, the warranty, as well as the styling and efficiency of the design of the car. So
Right.
I always thought that was interesting. But that is all I have for Jargon in a Jiffy. I'm sorry, for automotive news. I screwed that one up. I was looking ahead. But up next, sorry, I'm so excited for Jargon in a Jiffy. I'm already thinking about it.
That's
Up
why
next
I
for-
don't keep the spreadsheet up.
Yeah, well,
The doc up.
Well, I have the captions up. That's why I was already clicking on the caption. But Jargon in a Jiffy is the word game that Tommy and I play, where we take words from our individual jobs or careers. Me being an airline pilot, and Tommy being a medical professional as well as a safety specialist. Like, is that what your official title is now, Tommy?
Acting safety specialist.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay, so safety specialist. So we each pick a word from our industry that the other person shouldn't know, use it in a sentence, and the other host tries to guess what that means. And if they don't, then we explain it. And the whole idea is to get you guys familiar with the industry terms that we use, so they're not so intimidating if you ever come across them once you're in our career field. So as you can see, I have mine up because Tommy always lets me go first. So my term for today is type 1 and 4. So we were sitting O'Hare, and we noticed that the weather was going to get a little bit chilly and a little bit wet. So we went ahead and called for type 1 and 4.
De-icing fluid.
Okay. But you're right. It is de-icing fluid. But what's the difference between type 1 and type 4? I told you these things are going to get more complicated.
Yeah.
Not softballing them anymore.
I know it was. I know there's a differential. There's a difference in the fluids. I believe. Is it the type 1 that stays on the de-iced surfaces, like your wings?
Okay, so let me simplify it. What is the purpose of type 1 versus type 4? They have different purposes.
Okay, so one would actually be to take any ice that's currently on, and the other would be to avoid the buildup, I believe.
How do you know that? Did I talk about it?
No.
Have I talked about it?
Not at all. You're not going to believe this. I'm glad you're sitting down. So that program GSX that I have for the sim, when you call for de-icing, they talk about that. They'll say type 1 fluid, 50% mixture.
Well, yeah, but how do you know? Because type 1 is for de-ice and type 4 is for anti-ice.
Okay, so that was just an absolute sheer guess.
Okay, that was okay. That was
it does make sense because once you de-ice, you don't want to form any other ice because you're at O'Hare.
Accurate.
If it's one of your normal show times, you're not number 1 for departure.
Not necessarily, but yeah, okay. That was a good wag. Wise ass guess. Good job. I was wondering. I was like, how did you know that? So yeah, type 1 is the orange fluid. It's color coded. So type 1 is the orange fluid. It's a little less. It's more viscous. Trying to use big words here. My SAT vocabulary. So it's the one that looks more like orange water. Basically, it's a heated fluid. It's designed to remove ice and contamination from critical surfaces of the aircraft, which includes wings, tails, control surfaces, engine nacelles or engine sensing probes, anything that we consider critical. A lot of times you'll see type 1. Most of the time, it's type 1 is always before type 4, but most of the time where you just see type 1 is after a cold night and there's just frost. There's no active precipitation like snow, ice, anything like that. It's just they need to knock off the frost from the night before. Or the airplane came in and got iced up a little bit in the clouds when it landed. And you'll often know that because airplanes will come to the gate with the flaps down to a certain position to have us inspect or maintenance inspect the flap track bearings and stuff to make sure there's no ice before we retract them, or if there is, spray it off then retract. And there is what we call a holdover time, which is how long the fluid is good for preventing ice buildup again. Type 1 fluid, generally speaking, doesn't have a very long. It's like 30 minutes, depending on the condition. So depending on how quick you can get out of there, you could get a Type 1 spray. But the other type is Type 4, which is that green gunky stuff. It's less viscous. It looks like green slime. I used to call the CRJ 200s running around the airport the little green monsters because they're so tiny that even though they do like wings and tail, they're just covered in green. They're just these little green monsters running around O'Hare. It's hilarious when I see them. But Type 4 primarily is to prevent the buildup of ice on the aircraft while waiting for departure. So what happens is while you're sitting there and it's snowing, the snow and stuff is falling on the wings on top of the Type 4, but because of its chemical makeup and the glycol and stuff like that, it's not adhering to the wing. Okay? So when you get on the runway and you set takeoff thrust and you're rolling down around 180 knots, that fluid is designed to shear off the wing. It's designed to fall off the wing, carrying the contamination with it. So that's why it's Type 4. That's de-ice is to remove ice. Anti-ice is to prevent icing, basically. So when you're rolling down that runway and you see all that crap sliding off the wing, that's what it's supposed to do. It's taking all the contamination with it. But there is a holdover time. It's longer. It could be anywhere from like 45 minutes to 3 hours, depending on the weather conditions, the type of precipitation that's falling, the temperature, and the brand of de-icing fluid that is used, because it's different per airport and per company. It just depends. Each one has its own charts published by the FAA every winter season. But that's what's called the holdover time. So that's how long the fluid is good for before it's no longer able to prevent ice buildup on the aircraft. And fun fact, if you're anticipating, let's say I'm sitting in a clean airplane, that's one of the things I inspect when I'm doing the walk around. A clean airplane, which there's no ice on it, but we can see on the radar, or I can see out on the airport grounds that there is going to be a snowstorm coming. We can just do Type 4. Type 1 is primarily to clean the airplane before putting preventive measures on it. If the airplane is already clean, we can just go to straight 4 or Type 4 if we need to. So, good job, Tommy. Yikes. That was a good guess. I didn't think you surprised me on that one. I knew you were gonna hit de-icing, but I was wondering if you knew the difference between 1 and 4. But you did. You nailed it. Very well done.
Thank you.
All right, your turn.
So, okay, past precedents, I've always done jargon and jiffy in my EMS career. We're not doing jargon and jiffy in my EMS career today. I'm from my current endeavors.
Uh-oh.
The clamper is okay, and here comes the sentence. I was standing out at the dock and I noticed the pallets were kind of leaning, so I called for the clamper.
The pallets were leaning. Are the pallets like stacked?
Yes.
So you called for the clamper. Is it like a forklift with like 2 forks that go to hold it?
Tilt your hands 90 degrees.
Oh, okay. Left to right to squeeze it, basically. Is it a forklift, basically, with the?
It's we call them pits. It's a powered industrial truck. It's essentially a special attachment on the forks that will come, and it allows us to safely separate those pallets, because we only stack 2 pallets high because that's all you could do in the back of a truck.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes, though, cargo shifts.
Yeah. So
sometimes you're looking at it, it's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It comes in, squeezes it, and you could actually lift it off, or you could straighten it to where you could get in there with the regular forks and pull it down.
Cool. That's cool.
And then the funny thing is, when it opens, now you've seen wooden pallets. So it only spreads 4 inches more than the width of a wooden pallet on each side. And then it has about 2 inches of foam, like that heavy rubberized foam.
Yeah.
To protect product. So you're not putting it right against the metal and crushing it.
Nice. So you don't break my new Amazon package, basically.
Yeah. And then it's considered a specialty truck. We only have 3 people in my entire site that are trained to
That's
drive
able
it.
to do it. Nice.
Yeah,
Well, good. That was a good one. Okay.
that was a good one. That
Well,
was a good one.
that's jargon and GIF. We both got it, but they're both good words. It took a lot of brain power. But up next, Tommy and I are going to be talking about Career Corner. So, Career Corner is us talking about our careers, how we got to where we are, to give you building blocks. So, a step by step process if you want to become an EMT, medical professional, or an airline or professional pilot. If you want to go to the very beginning, this is your first episode, you got to go all the way back to episode 1 around this time, in every episode, around like 45 minutes or so, we talk about it. So, first, Tommy's going to be talking about getting towards the end of EMT training, and then I'll talk a little bit about the final bits of airline pilot training.
So, welcome back, everybody. I forget what week we're on. I think we're on week 15, but this is kind of a slowing down week, scaling back. Now, I had mentioned during last week's show, we started the cardiology module, and it was going to be a 2 week module, and it truthfully is, because there's just so many things that could go on. This week, we're starting with if the class block is 4 hours, we're starting with an hour review of everything we did last week. Anatomy, physiology, 1 and 2, pathophysiology, the effects of medication, what you hope the medication does. Sometimes it does. Sometimes people have adverse reactions to it. So as we get back up to speed, there's a quiz on our first day back, and it doesn't matter if you draw a stick figure heart. Part of the quiz is you have to draw a very basic heart with the vasculature in it, and it's just so we know what you're up to. So as the week starts progressing, we're talking more and more about actual conditions. So everybody knows the term heart attack, but the actual name of a heart attack is a myocardial infarction. There's 2 types. There's an acute one, and there's one that comes over time, and we go into the difference of that. What happens with congestive heart failure, um, cardiomegaly, myopathy, all everything that goes on. We're even bringing in a cardiologist. And my last stop in my EMS career, the cardiologist that used to do our lecture is oddly enough my cardiologist, who's just like a really cool, down to earth guy. And he didn't talk here. He understood he was talking to EMT candidates, and he was the type of doctor that he was able to teach and explain things just the way I'm talking with you guys now. He was never super impressed with himself that he got a fellowship in cardiology. He's just really a cool guy. And they may come back again a second time just to field more questions depending on how time runs and stuff like that. And also at this point, some of them you can request, and we've done this in the past, to where we've allowed EMT students to go down to the cardiac cath lab and actually watch a cardiac cath from the control booth. Essentially, they stick you in the corner, they give you a chair, look at you, and say, "We'll answer questions when we're done." And you could turn around and see the process. Because for those of you who never had a cath, there is a control room. You are in an x-ray suite, you're given a whole bunch of medication. Me personally, I was awake for mine. I felt no pain because they took care of it, but I literally watched my catheterization, and it was the wildest thing ever. But there is a control room that the doctor is conversing with while he's doing the cath, because they're the ones that are actually help him guide the wire through an artery into your heart so you can see what's going on. Um, every once in a while, they do allow that to happen. It is the process itself. It to this day, it amazes me, and I've watched I don't know how many of them, including my own. But we're going to start winding down. Say Thursday, we're going to start reviewing. And I had said earlier in one of the earlier episodes, I believe it was week 3 or 4 of EMT school, there are going to be certain modules that you're getting in an exam, and this is a major exam. So as we start to wind down the week, you guys are going to be relieved that cardiology is over, because it's not easy. But with your reading and studying and listening and taking good notes, like Bill always says with flight school, even with EMT school, good study habits. By Friday, we're going to wind up with the exam. And sometimes we could be mean, but we're not that mean of guys. We'll actually grade it right there for you and go from there. And then we'll start prepping you for what's going to start in the following week, to where we get to pulmonary emergencies and how we're going to segue it into pulmonary and then gastrointestinal stuff coming afterwards, and we're going to start winding the course down itself within the next couple of weeks. So there we go, Bill. We just in 2 weeks we covered everything that pre-hospitally we're going to need to know for the
Nice.
coronary system.
Nice. It's way more involved than airline pilot stuff because like my segment, that's it. Like this next one, that's it for zero to hero to be an airline pilot. So I'm interested to see it more or hear more about what goes into EMT training as well because it's a lot more involved than I thought it was going to be completely honest. So thank you, Tommy, for covering that. And what did you say you were covering next episode in the first Tommy's Corner for
Yeah,
EMT training?
the one that's going to make me feel really odd and tape the show sitting in my living room with no one to talk with back and forth. We're going to start going into pulmonary function and pulmonary problems. Like, you see it on TV, COPD and emphysema and all that.
Okay.
We're going to start going
Well,
into that.
perfect. Now you're going to have the whole time to talk about it. So that's going to be something that's going to be unique about the format that we're using for the next 2 months. But thank you, Tommy, for talking about EMT training. And I am going to talk about the last phase of airline training. We started off on the very first episode on October 5th of 2023 talking about the first step, which was your discovery flight. Now on episode number 15, we're talking about the final stages of being an airline pilot, or the airline pilot training, which is called initial operating experience. So last week we talked about your type rating using line-oriented flight training and your LOE to get your type rating from the FAA. Now you've been signed out, you're released from your training center, but you're not quite signed off to fly the line as a pilot yet. You have to go with what we call a line check pilot, formerly known as line check airmen. Basically, they're captains that have been trained to be instructors in the left seat or right seat, depending if you're upgrading to a captain or not. But as a new first officer, they're going to be in the left seat. They're training captains. So they're there to supervise your training in the real world environment. Your very first flight in a jet, mind you, because my first flight in the CRJ 700 was with real passengers behind me from Chicago to Indianapolis. So your first flight in an airline transport category aircraft is going to be with real life passengers behind you and a training captain or a line check pilot. Now, different airlines have different requirements in terms of IOE or initial operating experience, but the FAA always has a minimum for new first officers, 25 hours of training. That includes time as a pilot monitoring, as someone who's working the radios doing the non-flying stuff, as well as pilot flying, so they can evaluate your flying abilities for the actual flying of the aircraft. And there are little things that are a little bit different. The sim, even though we're not allowed to use the sim, flies a little bit different as an excuse. The sim does fly a little bit different than the actual airplane, so you learn those nuances as well as operating at your base. So each airport is different. The way that Chicago operates is different than the way Dallas-Fort Worth operates, which is different than the way LaGuardia operates. So it also gives you an exposure to your base of operations and how things run there. So the first leg, more often than not, is flown by the check airman, and then either your alternate or like at my company, they flew the first one, and then I flew the rest of them. Was basically it, so I could get my chops ready or, get the hand flying experience I needed on the 737. Then at the end of that, like with every phase of training we've talked about up until this point, at the end of that is going to be a evaluation, and that evaluation is called a line check. So a line check is where the evaluator is playing the line check airman or the check pilot is playing the role of just basically an average captain, and they are evaluating your ability to operate on the line. So they'll inform you this leg from point A to point B. My most recent one as a first officer was from, or when I was doing IOE, was from DCA to San Francisco. This is your line check, and then you just run it like you would any other flight. And as long as you're safe, efficient, and do everything by company procedures, then you get signed off at the end of it. You're the flying lead. They're going to see you to fly, they want you to take off, they want you to land, etc. Then after that, you get signed off, and then now you're released to crew scheduling and at the mercy of crew scheduling, and then you become a line qualified pilot. Now you will come back after that every so often, which will be the next thing we talk about for what we call continuing qualification or recurrent training. And then captains get an additional one every 12 months. They have to do what's called line checked, which is a check pilot sits in the jump seat and observes them flying on the line to ensure that they're safe and doing things properly on the line as well. But that's it. Zero to hero, 15 steps, 15 episodes. You started with your discovery flight, and now you're a line qualified airline pilot. Best feeling in the world, especially as a regional pilot, because you kind of made it to that first tier. And the good news is it's the same training when you go to the majors, or pretty much any other airline. It's similar training, so there's no real difference. That's the big steps in training. So now you're just focusing on, building your hours. And we can talk about that too in the future, about what you should be targeting in terms of things to do, extracurriculars, and time building, what time your major airlines might be looking for. But in terms of that is all I got for Career Corner. And now we're going to move on to our viewer Q&A. Our viewer Q&A is the segment where we take a look at our chat. We do have some interesting comments on here. I'll pop this one up. I don't know why they're not shown here. I'll do this.
So while you're doing that, you're going through IOE, and I'm thinking about a friend of ours and a member of our community who just recently went through his IOE.
Oh yeah, Moose
7.3.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. Yeah, he went in and he learned how to fly the 7.3, and now he's flying the 7.3. So it's the same at the regional. He did the same thing at his previous regional. I did the same thing at my regional. It's pretty not monotonous. It's the same standard kind of training once you get to the airlines. So once you do it once, it gets a little bit easier. And same thing with upgrade too. When you upgrade, you go through the same process.
Like both of us would have the same pucker factor. Like you sitting in the FO seat for the very first time.
It's not a pucker factor.
And it's like, oh, I hope I remember everything.
I'm going to be 100% honest. Once that door closes, you forget that the passengers are back there. To be completely honest, it wasn't a pucker factor. It's just like, holy crap, this is my first jet. And then you take off, and the thing moves so much quicker. Like, the sim can't recreate how fast that thing, especially the CRJ 700. And it's just like, wow.
That's a little land-based rocket ship.
It is. So, anyway, so the Q&A here, like I said, if you guys have any questions, especially because we're going to be talking about flat Earth today, you can definitely go and add. There's a couple in here I'm going to read. I'm not entirely sure what they mean, but they probably saw that the flat Earth was the title and decided to interject. But there is a QR code on the screen. We do have a Discord that's free for everybody to use. While Tommy and I are doing our recorded series for the next 2 months while I move houses, feel free to go in there. There is a section at the very bottom, a category that says 3 Green Simulation, or I'm sorry, it says Torque and Thrust Talk Show category. And there's a section you can ask questions. So if you have a burning question that we're not going to be able to answer live over the next couple months, go into the Discord, go down there, type it in, and we'll answer it on one of our recorded episodes. That's the best way to ask questions, and we can address that in the upcoming episodes. But for here, let's start off. Hold on. Sorry, that just went weird on my side. All right, so this first comment, this started before the show even started. I don't even know how to explain this. I'll just do this. So little did I know that on YouTube, when I set up the event, right, it allows people to start chatting before we actually go live. So this was 30 minutes before the show actually went live. TJ Jones on YouTube said, all flat earthers use the globe map to drive around. That's how indoctrination works. I talked to Tommy about this.
Lots.
I have no idea what that means. No idea what that means. I'm not sure if TJ is a flat earther or if, and he's saying that, so I don't know what the message is here, but I don't want to dig into it. So thanks, TJ, for an interesting comment, but I don't know what that means. We got some other good ones, like on YouTube, Chase B, good morning. I haven't seen you before, so welcome to the show. And then also, they don't hide. Oh, interesting. They don't Destination Storm on Kick as well. Welcome. It does for some reason shows the polite cat meme for some reason. But Tommy, do you have anything on your side before we dig into flat Earth? No. I'm so excited.
No, just I have viewers, but no actual questions. Okay, comments like, good morning, hello everybody, how are you? Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys. You guys joined for an excellent episode today. Um, as you have, for those of you that have been with me and Tommy from the beginning, from about 9 months ago when we started this journey and ended up here on the podcast, we have been plagued. I shouldn't say we. I have been plagued by flat earthers. Okay, to the point where in my TikTok live chats, I would filter out the words sphere and flat because if someone mentioned it in the comment section, it's like they all gravitated towards me. And I'm gonna make it very clear my side of where I sit on this. It's not flat, but it's a topic that keeps coming up. I've had people approach me in real life at work asking me these questions, so it's time to bring to light some of these flat Earth theories. And Tommy and I are going to talk about it a little bit. So, Tommy, to start off with, are you a flat earther?
No.
Okay,
No.
just want to make sure that
Not
we're
at all.
on the same page. If not, that'd have been okay, but we would have had some serious discussion points. But to first start off here, I'm going to bring up a TikTok video. And like I said, once someone mentions flat Earth on TikTok, my TikTok goes absolutely berserk. But here's this video, and I'll bring this up here. Is it not working? Where's the thing? There we go. So this guy on top, his name is David Weiss. He is kind of the ringleader right now for all the topics associated with flat Earth. And there's this guy named Professor Dave, who has gone and done correspondence with Weiss, and they talk about each other's. Basically, David comes up and says, "Oh, this is the reason why Earth is flat," and Professor Dave comes back and says, No, it's not. So this is just a tidbit. We're not going to go through all of them. We're just going to open the argument with this video. So let's watch. Oh, there's no sound. Why is there no sound? Let me refresh it, maybe. Oh, what happened to the sound? Can you hear it, Tommy?
No, I don't hear it.
Huh. Why? I don't know. Okay, hold on. Give me a second. I think I can figure this out. There, for some reason, is not... Oh. There we go. Give me just a second. I'll restart it here.
Do you have sound on your side?
The...
Bill, I'm getting messages that no one can hear it.
Oh, no one can hear it?
No one
Oh,
can
really?
hear it.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I know why. Okay, we'll just drop it then, because I know what it is. It's a routing issue. That's funny though, because I'm over here laughing to it by myself here. Let's see. The only way I think I could possibly get that to go is, let me try it this way. Well, I already closed it, but long story short, the Dave Weiss, Flat Earth member, is saying that the angular velocity at which we are rotating at, because we're spherical, we would feel that, right? And then Professor Dave is coming back and saying, well, 360 degrees over a 24-hour period, right? Because that's what we're rotating, or some certain amount, or 360 around 365 days. And he says, take your car, do a 360-degree turn, and make it last a year. or make it last 24 hours, are you going to feel that change? Perfect point, right? So this kind of brings us into our first our first thing, that because Tommy, I looked at this from livescience.com, talking about the different theories that flat earthers have. The first one is that flat earthers seem hard to dissuade based on standard scientific evidence, like scientific method, and there's a reason for that. Flat earth theorizing follows a mode of thought called the zetetic method. The zetetic method is an alternative to scientific method developed in the 19th century flat earther, 19th century meaning 1800s, in which sensory observations reign supreme. So, in other words, qualitative analysis versus quantitative. There's no numbers to back up what they're saying, right? Which is obvious because that's what they're saying is, and David Weiss was saying in that video, is that that nobody could hear, is that if we're accelerating like that, like what they say they are, we should be able to feel it. Because he can't feel it, obviously the Earth's not flat or not round, is what he's saying. And then, like I said, Professor Dave puts it in a very good perspective. Take your car, try to do a 360-degree turn, and make it last 24 hours. I mean, it baffles me, to be completely honest. What do you think, Tommy? So you can't feel the Earth rotating with us on top of it, right? Because technically, like, the space shuttle had to be going 17,000 miles an hour to continuously fall to stay in orbit. The surface is probably going a little bit slower than that, right? But should we be able to feel the Earth accelerating underneath us or us rotating?
No, because physics would dictate that would be all sorts of an issue. I mean, we have a gravitational pull, right? That's what keeps everything down, and it's done because of centrifugal force.
But it's not even centrifugal force. The feeling, because our inner ear, right? He wants to talk about observation. Let's talk about our inner ear. There's little hairs. I mean, you know this. That sense acceleration, right? We got the inner ear, the outer ear, and there's something that senses forward and back, or like linear acceleration. Acceleration is the change of speed, of velocity over time, not the change of velocity. That's not how it works. So acceleration, like in an airplane, as you're accelerating down the runway, if you're tossing an object, it's going to come towards you, right? Because you're accelerating. But once you reach zero acceleration or constant speed, you toss that thing up and it's going to stay right above your hand because you're moving, the object is moving at the same speed as you are, right? Because there's no change in velocity. So what's happening is the Earth is spinning at a constant rate. We were born at that when that Earth was spinning at the constant rate. So we can't feel the acceleration because the fact that there is no acceleration, the velocity is consistent. Now, if all of a sudden the Earth stopped rotating, and Neil deGrasse Tyson actually talked about this, if the Earth stopped rotating all for like a second, we would all feel it. You know why? Because of inertia. Guess what we would be doing? We would go flying, right? All the wind and the Earth's oceans and everything that was constant in that motion, it would come to a stop. We wouldn't float off into space. It's just things would go wild. We'd go flying because of that, right? It's like you said, it's freaking physics. Lando just joined. One of our moderators just joined one of our lives. Hello, Lando. We are talking flat Earth today. So that was the first one, right? Is that whole acceleration BS. Now, this is the leading flat earther theory, holds that Earth is a disk with the Arctic Circle in the middle and the center, and our Antarctica, a 150-foot tall, 45-meter wall of ice around the rim, blocking us from going over the edge. It's basically a huge swimming pool, is what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
And that NASA, they're saying that NASA is not a space agency, is a guard. And NASA's job is to guard this ice wall to prevent people from climbing over and falling off the disk.
Well, that is the motherlode of all conspiracy theories that I have ever heard.
Well, it's funny because, once again, Professor Dave and David Weiss were talking, and he goes, you draw, your north-south lines, and the way you're saying it is if people in Earth all face south, right, which is where he's saying the center disk is, based off the little flat Earth map and lines of longitude and stuff that they drew on it, they would all be looking separate directions. They wouldn't even all be looking south because it's flat. It's not a sphere. So once again, logic would dictate that they're wrong because there's no physical way for that to be possible. I mean, even, and even in space when the astronauts are up there on live TV and they like have a droplet of water floating around, because there's no force really being exerted on it, it goes onto its sphere. It turns into a sphere, and the majority of Earth is water. So once again, that's its shape. So, but that's their theory, is that there is Antarctica is in the middle and there's an ice wall around. I'm sorry, the Arctic Circle's in the middle, and then Antarctica is actually a ring around the edge, holding everybody in.
Yep, we look like a big donut.
Yep, exactly. Which, mind you, how do you explain seasons if that's true?
Oh, we're not even going to go there. We'll be here
so
for
are
6
we still?
days.
So are we still heliocentric? Do we still rotate around the sun? Is the disk tilted? A lot of people argue that the sun rotates still around the Earth, around this disk. Like the disk doesn't really move, but it's still that the sun rotates around us. But then you run into the problem. Then how do you explain seasons? It would be daytime all the time.
So then, what's on the underside of a disk? What's on the underside of the disk?
I got that. Hold on. Where's it at? As for what lies underneath the disk of the Earth, this is unknown, but most flat earthers believe it's composed of rocks. I mean, they're not technically wrong. I mean, the core of the Earth is hot magma, rocks and such. But here, I'm going to pull up the flat Earth map real quick and bring that up for us to gaze upon. Let's see if I can find one. I don't even know if Google will let me find one. Hold on. Google's probably like, that's misinformation.
It very well could be. Well, to a majority of people, it's misinformation.
Okay, here we go.
To a minority of people, I should say, the flat earthers.
Yeah. Okay. Can I please just let me scroll down? All right. Let me see if I can share this. This doesn't have sound, so we shouldn't have that problem. There we go. That's supposedly what it looks like.
I mean, that would look good on a rug.
It would, but how do you... But that's exactly what it is. So you see right here in the center, that's the Arctic Circle, right? Mm-hmm. And then here is the Antarctica, right? Even this is frustrating because what Professor Dave was saying was that if you have, somebody saying here at the north, right, and say you're supposed to be looking south towards Antarctica, everybody would be facing a different direction based off this map, right? Even in the northern United States. And then not to mention, once again, how do seasons work? So this disk is floating around the sun with one side constantly pointed, I guess, to the seasons. But if it was, you know what I mean? Like if it was rotating, how do we get days? How do we get seasons out of this?
I don't know. Because apparently the way this map is orientated right now, if that light, if you look by the Americas, you see where it lightens up. So is that the only strip of sunlight?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so South America and what is that? Central or like Russia has daylight at the same time, is what this is saying.
That's what I'm getting. And
is that the vibe you're getting? Because that's what I'm seeing by looking at this.
That's picture. The vibe I'm getting, and I'm like, listen, I am by no means a scientist, but I'm pretty sure that the Earth doesn't look like a Neapolitan style pizza.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But yeah, so that's what the map. This is the leading, based off the website I was looking at. This is the leading map. This is what they think it looks like. Okay, which is wild, super wild. Let's see, is this going to switch things over? Okay, I'm going to keep that up while we're talking about this. So furthermore, we're talking about gravity, right? Earth's gravity is an illusion. They say objects do not accelerate downward. Instead of the disk of the Earth accelerates upward at 32 feet per second, which is 9.8 meters squared. That's the standard acceleration of gravity, driven by a mysterious force called dark energy.
Wait, what?
They in their science, they literally have the word mysterious force called dark energy. So, because we say, right, everything, and it's true, gravity works perpendicular to the Earth's surface. It always goes to the core because the magnetism and at which the spinning causes, gravity moves towards the center of Earth, right? That's why no matter where you stand on Earth, you're upright, right? You're not falling off in Australia. That's another thing they argue. If it was round, people would be falling into the atmosphere. Not true. Spinning. So what they're saying to counteract the argument of gravity, which has been around since Sir Isaac Newton theorized about it way back when, is they're saying that it accelerates upward, which I'm assuming, I don't know what they mean by upward, because if Earth is flat, then how is there upward? Anyways, they're saying it's upward at 9.8 meters per second squared, which is the acceleration of gravity. But the reason it's going upward, I guess, towards the center of their world is called dark energy. I can't even wrap my head around it. I don't think if somebody explained this to me, I'd be able to understand what
someone needs to email Dr. Degrassi to explain dark energy to me, because you say that, and I understand there are people, this is their firm belief, and I'm not bagging on it, but this whole dark energy thing, it just reminds me of like an episode of Star Trek or something. I'm sorry.
I would say dark matter is the matter between matter, which actually exists. It's 100% a thing. Antimatter. Sorry, not dark matter. Antimatter. It's 100% scientific proven thing. This mysterious force called dark energy. Have no clue what they're talking about. It doesn't make physical sense. It's like they've taken years of physics and just thrown it out the window. Is what they're trying to do. And mind you, and research. Yeah, and we talked about this earlier in the pre-show. Even the Greeks knew that the Earth was round in the 3rd century before Common Era, BCE. They knew it was round, and they even estimated its circumference. And then obviously different time periods, because like around Christopher Columbus, they still thought the Earth was flat. They still thought it was going to fall off the end. But it wasn't until the 19th century and even the 1950s is when the Flat Earth Society actually was founded, that people have come up with this. So they're just denouncing like centuries worth of science and observation to be like, nah, not right. Earth's flat. It's conspiracy.
Yeah. And like, I understand the days back in the days of Columbus and Verrazano, when the great exploration was happening. Like, I get it. They watched Columbus's 3 boats sail, and then they went over the horizon. Oh, they fell off the Earth. And then 3 years later, they come back.
They're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
You fell off the edge.
Yeah, so what would you do? Did you just kind of just like float around for a little bit, use oars, and pedal your way back to the water and all that? I mean, so I understand back in that time why they thought the Earth was flat, because they had no basic understanding of what the horizon was.
Right, well, because they were still exploring. But fast forward to nearly 600 years later, and we still got people going, it's flat, despite NASA and just there. And I'll go over in a second, because why it's unique, and I want to talk about this, and I always get questions about this because I'm an airline pilot, so I get a very unique perspective to this. And once again, for the people that are just joining, we are not flat earthers. We're just talking about the subject because I have been plagued with flat earthers since the beginning of my TikTok live phase. So yeah, it doesn't make sense, especially that one. Now the next one, this is the one that makes me really question. So flat earthers, their opinion about the moon varies, because it is very apparent that the sun, the moon, the planets, including Mars, mind you, Mars is a very similar planet to Earth, which is without water. Those are all round. Every physical observation using telescopes of our solar system indicate that planets are round. The only really non-round objects would be like comets and asteroids and stuff like that. But like I said, every planet in our solar system is spherical, right? Our moon, the closest celestial body to us that we have visited, that we have seen, is round. However, some flat earthers think that while Earth is flat, the moon and sun are spheres. So you're observing, so for example, Mars, right? Mars has been known, it is a very similar planet to Earth. almost a lot of people would argue that it is the future of Earth, right? It's a older Earth,
Hmm.
right? Because they found evidence of water and all that sort of stuff, possibility of life forms. It has a very thin atmosphere, but it does have an atmosphere. Um, and it's sphere. It's a sphere. I mean, you're staring basically at the mirror in the mirror of our planet, and it's spherical, right? The sun, which is a gaseous ball of fission, right, is a sphere. We have the gas giant, the largest planet in our solar system, Jupiter, right? Is made. There's nothing solid about it. It's all gaseous. Same thing with like Saturn, Neptune. They're spheres, right? Pluto, rest its soul, no longer a planet, still a planet in my book, but is a sphere. It's cold ice rock farthest away from the sun is a sphere. Where is the misconnect? Is my question. If you want to talk about this, what is it called? Um, the tectic method where observations and of the senses reign supreme. You are literally seeing other planets of the same makeup, and similar design that are also sphere. So, what would drive them to be like, well, we're flat? Is my question.
I don't
What in
know
the world?
because I can't wrap my head around their theories.
I don't think anybody can. To be completely
Yeah,
honest.
I mean, aside from them, but it just like you said, there is evidence that everything is a sphere.
I mean,
Now,
just by looking at it, anybody can go to your local Walmart and buy a telescope. And at certain times of year, certain planets are closer than others. In March, in March, Mars is usually at its closest orbit to us, and
hmm
that's the best time to see it. You can whip out your telescope and look at it, and you can tell it's a sphere. Um, and that's the part that baffles me about flat earthers, that they're like, yeah, we can see, right, using their version of their scientific method where they're saying we reject all modern science and just use what we feel. Well, vision is one of those senses for observation, and you can physically see other celestial bodies of similar makeup and size being the same as being a sphere. So why is Earth different? I just don't understand that.
I don't
Is
know.
my whole thing.
I can't wrap my head around it.
Well,
Like
the funny thing
the actual
is
theory of it.
yeah. Well, the thing is so there's theories, and there's people out there that actually go out and try to test these theories, right? So unfortunately, there was one gentleman, the one in Arizona, I think, the one that was building a rocket to try to launch, I guess, to try to see the curvature of the Earth. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he had a homemade rocket. Um, and one of them, one of the last, well, it is the last launch because he died. The parachute failed to open, and he just plummeted back in his little homemade rocket. Okay, that sucks. Still didn't prove that the Earth was flat. What I love though is a lot of the people that are going out there and making or doing their own experiments, right, to prove that the Earth is flat, are actually proving the opposite. So one of the famous ones is, and I don't know the exact, it might be like 12 or 15 miles. Every so often, the Earth will drop a couple of feet, right? The gradient, the curvature. And they set up this experiment where they had one person standing with a flashlight or and a cut, like a hole in a board, and they set up another one with a camera that was like 12 or something miles away in the middle of the night in the middle of the desert. And in theory, or maybe it was a laser pointer, if they shot the laser through that hole and the Earth was flat, then they should see 12 miles away, they should see that laser pointer on the same board in the same spot, right? Because it was equally cut. But
Yes.
guess what? Oh no, it was a
It-
flashlight because they looked through the thing and they said, "Hey, I can't see the light. Can you turn it on?" And the guy was like, "It is on." He goes, "Wait, are you sure it's on?" Yeah. They couldn't see it. Why? Because the curvature of the Earth. You know what I mean? And then there was another one where there was they bought really expensive accelerometers, right? Because they determined, I think it was like 1 degree per something. I can't remember what it is, but basically, if the Earth was spherical and spinning like they had said, it would register this amount on the accelerometer. What they did is they sealed the accelerometer in a fixed place, covered, and let it run for a couple days or so, and then pulled it off to see what the reading was. And guess what the reading was? Exactly what they said it would be if the Earth was round.
hmm. Yeah, and then
So
then there's that
it's
whole little thing of the Coriolis effect.
Well, that's spinning, but a lot of some flat earthers argue that the disc is spinning too, which could cause it. Yeah. But and here's my 2 cents, because you want to talk about observational science. As an airline pilot, there's different phenomenon and stuff that we witness the curvature of the earth. I'm not talking about like from the edge of space can see the thing, but there are things that indicate curvature. So for like the first one, I hear this all the time. I've actually had 2 people come up to me in airports and ask me if the earth is flat, dead serious, and I dead serious said no, it's not. A lot of people argue that out the window they can't see the curvature of the earth, right? So we're talking about airplane windows. Well, here's the deal. You're driving along a highway, right? Just let's say it's a flat earth, like you said, right? And you're driving parallel to the terrain features at 75 miles an hour. You look out, are you really going to see the change in curvature as you're going along the curvature? No, probably not, because you're not there's no change. It's you're moving along it. But pilots in the front of the aircraft, we are moving perpendicular to the curvature because we're moving across normally east to west, depending on what we're doing. And there's been multiple times I have seen not physically, but like witnessed the curvature of the earth via instrumentation and observation. Big one is going west towards the Rockies. Take off from like say Chicago, heading to somewhere on the west coast. On a clear, beautiful day, if the earth was flat, I'm up at like 30,000 feet. I should be able to see the Rockies clear as day. But here's the deal. That's not possible because of the curvature of the earth. In fact, I have witnessed seeing the very tippy top of the Rocky Mountains first and watched them grow in my windscreen on a clear, beautiful day as I got closer because of the curvature of the earth. The curvature of the earth was blocking 14,000-foot mountains. And only as we got closer did they get bigger. They looked really small and they got bigger and bigger and bigger, and vertically wise, right? Not talking about getting closer, bigger my windscreen, just what I could see. Same thing with thunderstorms as well. So thunderstorms, we have airborne weather radar in our aircraft. There has been times where, once again, coming over the Rocky Mountains, I could see the thunderheads, the big clouds, right? And I knew I needed to turn on my radar. But when I turned on my radar, I couldn't see the storms. It was just blocked out because it was hitting terrain, right? Even though I could see the very tops of the clouds. What was blocking it? The curvature of the earth. As we got closer, I didn't mess with my radar. As we were getting closer to the weather, the storm clouds became bigger in a sense. I could see more, not bigger, but I could see more of the clouds. And then they started to appear on my weather radar because the curvature of the earth was not blocking the outputs of my weather radar. Another thing that pilots witness, and I've seen this so many times, it was confusing at first when I was first an airline pilot, but air traffic control calls out an airplane 20 miles ahead, opposite direction, 1,000 feet above, right? So they give us a heads up that we're looking for it. That airplane, when you first see it, looks below you. It's the weirdest thing because you're like, I think it's that one, but they said 1,000 feet above. That looks like 1,000 feet below, right? It's the weirdest thing. But by the time you all meet, they're 1,000 feet below. Why is that? Because their altimetry above the pressure datum plane is 1,000 feet above you, but in front of us, because of the curvature of the earth, they're technically below us. So it's like, let's see if I can get it in frame here. There we go. So we're here, but we're looking at them down here, and as we get closer, because of the curvature, they go above us, right? Which is the coolest thing to see, because at first you're just like, wait, there's no way that's a thing. I can't, there's no way they're above us, and they get closer and they come right over the top of you. So those are things that I have seen with my own eyes that, once again, now granted, I never questioned whether or not the earth was flat, but there has been nothing to indicate in terms of observational science from me as an airline pilot to indicate that the earth is flat. In fact, it's opposite. There's more and more things that indicate to me that the earth is in fact curved. What about you, Tommy? Have you ever seen the curvature of the earth?
I have not. I've never been in an
Question.
altitude to where I can.
Do you need to
Um,
see the curvature of the earth?
I do not. I do not. I went to school. I know
Yeah,
geography.
I believe
You know,
I believe in science.
yeah, I
And
do
I don't
believe
think
in
science is
scientific
a
fact.
conspiracy. Yeah.
Um,
So,
Now, this is a great topic, but hard for me to wrap my head around because as you're talking, and I'm like, if you think about it, it just makes sense.
well, and
This
that's the
is
thing.
not
None of their theories make
crazy stuff.
sense. No, it's I just honestly don't know how to explain it. Like I said, I've seen it as an airline pilot. I've seen evidence that the Earth is a sphere. I have. It's definitely more noticeable going perpendicular to the curve. Like heading east west is usually where I mostly um, notice the curve. But like once again, it's just you see, or you can see it at the edge of a lake. Like standing on the edge of a lake, and you can see like Chicago. Appears that half the city is below the lake. That's curvature, man. And it's not, it's every
Hmm.
12 or 15 miles, the Earth drops ever so much. And also, another argument too is if the Earth was flat, how do we orbit satellites? Over polar orbits, east west orbits, geosynchronous? Because if there's no curvature for them to fall around, they would just be crashing to the Earth constantly.
Yep.
Physics.
Physics.
Freaking physics. Well, I think we did that one. We did pretty good, Tommy, I think. Once again, Tommy and I are not flat earthers. We just want
No,
to
we are not. We are round
no,
earthers.
yeah, we believe
Spherical
in
earthers?
spherical earthers. But we're more here to just kind of because it's something that it constantly gets brought up to me as an airline pilot. Probably not as much as an EMT, but
No,
people
not so
always
much.
talk about it. Yeah, and people always talk about it, and it's it was a good time for me to bring it up on the podcast because we could kind of talk about it, especially from my experience as an airline pilot, because that's something that's unique that even flat earthers may not necessarily have a perspective of from what I see up in the flight deck. Because that to me, that's proof enough. I see different things that indicate that there is a curvature of the Earth,
Yep.
basically. And like I said, I do believe in science. So excuse me. So with that, folks, we'll start wrapping this up. Going a little over the 90-minute mark here. But thanks. That concludes episode number 15, Flat Earth. And we do thank you all for joining us and hope you have enjoyed the talk show. If you want to stay up to date with the show and industry news, please follow us on Twitter at Torque in Thrust Talk Show or at Torque, the letter N, Thrust TS. It's in the ticker tape below. If you'd like to save the show for on-the-go entertainment and news, follow and turn on notifications to the talk show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Feel free to follow me at Captain Bill Official or Tommy at Level Flight Simulations on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, and the talk show is now on Kick as well. Now, the next show, as we talked about at the beginning, but if you just be joining us, as you can see behind me, there's a lot of moving boxes. I am moving homes. This was kind of a new life update that happened this month. It will happen at the end of next month, but in the process, we will not be able to do live live TikToks like this. So what we're going to be doing is every week on the platforms listed above, so that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, there will be regular episodes posted. They'll be pre-recorded. And since Tommy and I won't be able to work together physically while we're doing this, it's going to be alternating. So Tommy will do a week called Tommy's Corner. I'll do something called Bill's Corner, and it's basically going to be the same show format with little tweaks to it, but it's just going to be us individually doing the podcast for about the next 2-ish month or so.
Hmm.
Our next show live we will be anticipating will be in April 2024. So it'll be about a 2-month hiatus because right after the show, I am completely decommissioning the current studio setup and getting everything packed, and then won't be moved in until the end of February, and then we go on vacation, and then I got to reset everything up and get everything up and running come April. So that's why April, it may be earlier than that, but we're targeting April for our next live show. So with that, everybody, thank you all for joining us on the Torque and Thrust Talk Show. On behalf of the show, I am Bill.
I am Tommy.
And we do appreciate you all joining us, and we will see you live in April.
Mhm.